Hello and welcome to Traction Stories. I interview B2B SaaS founders on how they got some traction for their products. And we usually go back to the root, which is positioning. I'm your host, Gaspar. I'm a B2B product marketing consultant. I work with SaaS companies on their positioning in order to accelerate their generation of demands, leads for their SaaS products. In today's episode, I'm meeting with Pierre, which is a co-founder of Claap, and we're going to talk about how he found the right use case for his SaaS that unlocked his traction to his growth rate. That's quite impressive. How he navigated these changes as he was creating a category, the market was changing with COVID and everything. And finally, how he, as a founder, lived the pivot and how he changed and his approach to refining his market fit to get more traction. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe, leave a like, and yeah, you know the drill, so share it if you enjoyed. And yeah, have a good one. Hello, Pierre. I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah, hi Gaspar, how are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Very good, thanks.
Yeah, you're the co-founder of Clap. And today we're going to talk about many things, about how you grew it and where you are right now. But first, the classic question, can you give us an overview of what is Clap and what have been your journey so far?
Yeah, definitely. Maybe just a quick word. I'm super happy to do this podcast because my background is really product marketing, and we had some discussions before, Gaspar. So really happy to discuss about Clap and also like the mistakes we've done along the way, and maybe like Clap in a few words to answer your question. So what we do is, so we are some kind of data provider coming from your sales conversations to make AI agents work. So the starting point is to say that right now everyone wants to build AI agents, especially like to gain like more sales efficiency. But the main problem is that if you don't feed AI agents with the right data and the right context, it's basically just dumb and stupid. It doesn't work. And the problem we've noticed is that if you look at the data provider market, you have a lot of players that are really focused on sourcing external data to power automations like lead enrichment, lead scoring, outbound, and so on. So you have like Clay, ZoomInfo, Apollo, you have like really hundreds of them. But if you, when the moment you start speaking with like a prospect, you no longer care about the data coming from LinkedIn. The data you care is really the one coming from your conversations, like, okay, what's their stack, what's the renewal date, what kind of challenges they have, and so on. And the problem is that right now, even though you have like a note taker or like a conversational intelligence solution, it's still going to be really, really hard to capture and really act on this data, especially like if you want to build like more advanced AI agents. So this is typically what we do with Clap. We capture and we structure this data. And in general, we are going to focus on three type of use cases. The first one is really about sales productivity, like the idea of really automating like all the post-meeting tasks that you have. So notes, follow-up email, CRM enrichment, and so on. The second type of use case is more for sales managers with the idea of helping them like get visibility faster on what's happening in those conversations. Like, do they follow the right sales process? What kind of objection do they face? What type of competitors do they need to face in a deal, and so on. And then the last part is also about, okay, we have all those like data and conversations. How can we go one step further in what you can do with that? By, for example, documenting your sales playbook, or for example, let's say you work in product marketing and you working on a new launch and you want to easily understand the feedback and objections on this new feature, or maybe you want to prioritize your sales like your product roadmap. That's what you can do with.
I found it super interesting because I've seen your pitch evolved over time. Thank you for giving the speech, by the way.
Yeah.
And I think it's super interesting because I've known you for a note taker tool mostly. And I've seen you that now that you really go a step further and not just take notes, but really automate some steps to help the sales teams, the RevOps teams, and all the automation you can do afterward is really interesting to see into
Yeah,
each.
but it's funny because you started knowing us when we were like a meeting note, like a note taker.
Yeah.
but actually, like, before being a note taker, we are, like, not at all a note taker. But we kind of pivoted to address this market because we saw that our users were actually, like, using the solution for that. So it was actually, like, more a pull coming from our users. Because maybe just to give you a kind of the background story of Claap, but when we started, it was not at all a note taker or like what we do now. The initial idea and the thing that we wanted to build was what we call at the time asynchronous meeting. So it was during COVID, we were on back-to-back meetings, and the idea was to kind of build a system where you could align and make decisions, but without having to spend your days in meetings. So the first product was, and the problem was, okay, we have too many meetings because the read like written communication is too difficult and you lack context and interactivity. So we tend to default back to meetings to make decisions. So like, okay, so we need to create a new format in between that combines asynchronous communication with like the video plus interaction and so on. Long story short, it was, to summarize, the product was a more collaborative Loom or Vidyard. So you could send video that you could annotate with like precise feedback. And in a workspace that was really similar to Slack and Notion, because the end goal was to say, okay, you need a system of record for all decisions if you want to create alignment and transparency within the organization. When we launched, we are like trying to target mostly product teams, but the product was like quite horizontal, and it was really the go-to-market motion was really product-led with a self-serve, the premium model, and so on. At some point, when we really tried to monetize the product, we realized that at the same time, the market changed a lot because the back-to-back meetings was no longer like a big problem. And at the same time, this type of solution, the willingness to pay was too low. And I think also like the day-to-day usage was like just too low to really pay for it. So it was really, really hard to make the product really grow as much as we wanted. And the funny stuff is that at the same time, we realized that the people that were using the product the most and that were also willing to pay for the product were actually like people using the Chrome extension we had to record meetings. And we just had like the video and the transcript at the time, but they wanted to have that to do then sales coaching, to review some calls, training, and so on. So at some point, like, okay, let's pivot. The let's pivot took us a bit of time, to be honest, like a long time to realize that. And then we pivoted to address the revenue teams. It was something like a year ago, a bit more. And since then, yeah, it was really day and night in terms of
Really, that's super interesting. We talked about it beforehand, but I really want to dive more into how you kind of found this use case. But to give more context to listeners, when did Clap start? When did you
yes,
start Clap? And
yeah,
did you raise funds at the beginning? How did it go?
yes, we started in 2021. We raised actually like 3 million in pre-seed at the beginning. At first, we are like really into, our background is more product and marketing. So we are like really into building a pure PLG product-led product like Slack, Notion, and this kind of platform. So we did like the typical 10 months in private beta. Then we launched on Product Hunt. We are like number one product of the week. And so a lot of vanity metrics. And then we started monetize maybe 1.5 years after the launch. And we live for almost like 10 months. We really struggled to monetize the product. It was really hard compared to the usage. So at some point, like, okay, we need to do something about it. We are like not on the right market. So what do we do? And we had like really those teams paying and being super happy about Clap, and it was really sales teams. We knew it was funny because we knew it was a competitive market. Like you have like a lot of players and so on, but at the same time, the market was really pulling us to do it. And I think because we had this product background, the product was also very intuitive and very easy to use. And because of the workspace we had built and this vision of building a system of record for decisions, the product was also really good at collaboration and structuring data in a very unique way. So what we did when we decided to pivot was, okay, let's not try to ask too many questions about how to be unique and how to create a category. Let's try to take a category and refine your ICP and be better at ease of use, implementation, pricing, all this kind of stuff. And to give you an idea, I think we generated like maybe 1 million of ARR in 10 months with that, with no sales rep, like just me as a sales rep. So it really worked. And right now we are more in the process of saying, okay, we are in a category that is a bit crowded. So how do we differentiate ourselves like better? What is really unique about us? And I think right now there is like this new opportunity about, okay, agents. Everyone wants to build AI agents, so you need to feed those AI agents with the right data and the right context. And I think we are like now really uniquely positioned to have one of the best solution to address.
That's really interesting. Congrats for the for the numbers. And so to give a really track the timeline, you pivoted around 2023, 2024.
2020.
24. That's when you pivoted a year and a half ago. And now you pivot. When did you pivot? Did you pivot recently towards the
No,
AI
no, no.
agents?
No, I think it's more for me. Pivot is really when you change something like
Okay. So
completely like differently. The rest for me, it's more positioning. It's something that is constantly like living, and that you need to make evolve like over and over again, because the market dynamics are going to be different. Maybe your target market is going to evolve a bit, and you are going to move a bit up market. Maybe the competitive landscape is also changing a lot. It's more about, for me, positioning is it's a constant iteration. In general, what I do is like I have a new sales deck every quarter or every month. Like you need to always refine your positioning.
hell yes. I like it because with your background in product marketing, you speak my language. I hear many words here. We have the same jargon. I'm really happy with this. Thank you to all the listeners. Please look at product marketing and do like Pierre. And I'm curious really about some topics we already discussed before, but you had one main idea at the beginning, which was replacing meetings. And you kind of really believed in the idea. That's what got you started and how you raised some funds. You did a private beta. You tried for a few months to sell it. So you told us that you looked at who was paying among your customers and who was happy and what use case was the thing they were looking for. So the note-taker industry in that case. But how did it feel from the inside to have your main idea actually have to change it? Feel you have to change it? Was it hard to do?
I think for me, that's really what differentiates a first-time founder from a second-time founder. Is that when you start like your first company, I think maybe you are like very much attached in your idea, and maybe because you raise fund, you think it's because people believe that your idea is going to be the winning one, but actually like it's not often the case. And that's why for us it took us really a long time to pivot, because we are always thinking that, okay, it's not the problem we address or the market we are on that is the issue, but it's more about, okay, we are missing this one feature that is going to solve everything. And we really persisted a lot in that direction. I think like and that's probably like one of the biggest thing I learned is more about, okay, it's better to really pick the right market, because the traction is not coming from your product. It's going to come a lot from the market you are on, and the type of problems that you are trying to solve. The problems we tried to solve at the beginning, it's funny because when we launched in beta, we had like a lot of sign-ups and traction, because the problem was huge during COVID, but then it completely fall down. So yeah, like I think it's a lot about picking the right market and how intense the pain is, and then also how unique your solution is. Or if your solution is not unique, you need to like also take care a lot about the user experience and all this kind of stuff. I think it was coming from Enzo from June. He showed like a picture recently, and I think it's a good illustration of the picking the right market. You have like on one side the problem you try to address, and then on the other side like the solution. And so the pain, it's really about, okay, picking the right one where people are really willing to pay a lot for. And on the solution, you need to find a way to be different. It can be like positioning features. It can also be like a user experience. I would say like for a year on our side, it was a lot of user experience. But yeah, I think that would be like the two main components.
I have many questions. I have one on the pivot you made when you changed the kind of main use case. Did you right away decide, okay, when we pivot, we just only show one use case on our website, on our sales exit?
No, no, I think that's the moment where we persisted. Is that we slowly introduced the meeting recording use case, but instead of saying, okay, we go all in on this because this is the one that is working, I think we wanted to make it compatible with our first vision. And so we tried to sell what we call the all-in-one video workspace, where you could do like both screen recording and meeting recording. But at the end of the day, it was like just too complex to sell. You have some solution that manage to do it, but it's much harder to sell, because if you have like one of the problem and you are really willing to pay a lot to solve one of those, you don't want to have like a all-in-one solution, and you want to have like a specialist. So in the end, the people you are going to attract, they want to solve a mix of both, but the willingness to pay, I think the average willingness to pay is going to be the lowest of the two. For example, even right now, I have sometimes this use case. So in some cases, I have companies and like head of sales, CRO, RevOps, they come to us. They know exactly what they want to fix. Like it's about a sales rep, it's about sales productivity, it's about sales coaching, and so on. And they know that the money they lose by not solving the problem is really high. So then the willingness to pay is really high. And in some cases, people want to have like a generalist note taker that can tackle the sales use case. But the second option, the willingness to pay is like really low, like compared to the first use case, because they tend to say, okay, but yeah, it's good for my sales rep, but I want this solution for everyone, and I'm not willing to pay $60 for my software engineers. So I want to have like a really discounted price, and yeah, this type of deal is much harder to sell.
I really like how with your experience, you show what I'm preaching on product marketing and entrepreneurship. You have to follow the best use case and the best target customers for your business, even if you have some that still pay you but not enough. You kind of have to make the tough choice of ignoring those because they don't pay enough, and you have a better fit with the, let's say in your case, the sales reps or the sales teams, because they see your revenue are much clearer, and the pain is much sharper. They feel it daily. So it's really interesting. And usually, like what you said, what you did on pivoting toward this use case is what I recommend to founders when they have to choose a market, is to choose the one which is validated, like the red ocean, the where there are competitors, it's already a proven demand. And then in this market, you identify which pain is the sharpest to focus on, or which target customers is the best in terms of fit and traction. It's about making the choice between all of these options that you have in the market that's already existing. But in your case, the market existed when you pivoted, but it was also in creation. Like it was still, like the note-taking space was still new. How is it to navigate such a market that's evolving quite quickly and that's still quite new?
Yeah, I think like it's not only note taking, but it's more about the AI market in general.
Okay. Hmm.
is that you have like so many changes happening all the time in terms of like models, in terms of like new products and so on. So it's really a funny, interesting market because you have like new stuff every 2 weeks, and we like crazy new stuff every 2 weeks. For me, the biggest, and you have like so many change of paradigm in the way you build software. For example, like for me, one of the biggest one for me is about the fact that before you are like building softwares for humans. And so it was really about, okay, I build an interface so that humans can use it. Or maybe you had like some APIs, but it was really mostly for humans. And right now, when you build a software, it's also about, okay, I build for humans, but also for AI agents to use that. And also you can think about a lot about some new use cases that you could have never imagined before. Because the problem with software in general is really adoption. Because in general, you buy a software because you saw a crazy demo about all the stuff you could do with the platform. But at the same time, okay, maybe it's faster to do it, but you don't have time. Like it's like meeting notes. You don't have time to read meeting notes or have time to review con calls and so on. You wish you had time, but you don't. So in the end, you're like, okay, I don't use the software at its full potential. But now what is changing is that the full potential doesn't have to be only used by humans, but also by agents that can actually like read and act on this context. And if you think about this, it's crazy because you can really build like completely like a new use cases and
Yeah.
solve problems. You're like, okay, I wasn't aware it was solvable before.
That's the power of new technologies and AI these days. When you decide to make all of this, right, I mean, when you decide your direction toward these use cases linked to sales, I understood that it's because from the sales teams, the sales head of sales are kind of the best persona for you, the best ICP. They are the one that see the pain, they want to pay faster, more, and have maybe a better adoption for you. And it makes sense that you expand into use cases like this one. But don't you fear that also it's going to broaden your ICP because you also have to include engineers and maybe other sub-segments as well?
No, no, no. It would be too much of a defocus.
Uh-huh.
And also, like, I feel like not like, and that's probably like a mistake we haven't done when pivoted. Is that when we say, okay, we are not taker, we actually didn't say we are not taker. We said, okay, we a conversation intelligence solution for sales teams. But from the beginning of the pivot, we said we are for sales teams. And because the issue is that if you could do HR, you could do software engineers and so on, but then it's going to be really hard to sell for sales team if you do everything. However, where we expand very well is more about saying, okay, we focus a lot on how to use your conversations with prospects and clients and so on. So the natural is really sales, customer success, even product when you do user interviews. But the collaboration happens more about how to use the data coming from those conversations.
Yeah.
So and I think that's really something that is missing on a lot of verticalized sales solution, is that it was only built for salespeople, but the sales use case is something that interests the entire company. To give you an example, yesterday I was with a client. It's called BDs, and they're like launching a new AI product. And the product marketing manager, she wanted to get feedback on how salespeople were basically pitching the functionality, what were like the objections from the prospect, all the questions and so on. And Clap basically it took her like maybe 1 minute to capture all this data. She just created a template to extract all the insights in a very formatted way. And she applied this template retroactively for all the calls from the past months. and she had a database with like all the consolidated feedback. It took her like maybe 1 minute to have it. And this is really it's a use case for product marketing, but based on the data coming from your sales and customer conversations.
Yeah, for product marketers like me, all of the AI use cases are mostly about intelligence and
Yeah.
gathering data, analyzing data, and all insights. So for me, it's a perfect use case. And I guess for the sales, kind of, because you help them in a indirect way as well. When you earlier you said when people buy a SaaS, it's also because it saves them time. I mean, it's kind of a time loss. In that case, in that example, the product marketing manager, I guess, was spending time listening to all the calls, and that's how he or she saves some time. But so that's because the number one alternative to most SaaS is actually do nothing and do it by hand, do it yourself, etc.
Yeah.
But in your case, because it's changing really fast in the market, there's also free alternatives that pop up, like the Gemini, the note taking for Google, or all of these new option alternatives you have. So in addition to, as you said, that selling the all-in-one platform is much harder than just the one feature. How do you envision this future where you have so many different competitors that pop up, plus you that you have now more complex use cases to sell? How do you keep traction with all of this?
I think it's really about focusing on your ICP. Like Gemini, for me, it's not a competitor. Like it was launched 1 month or 2 months ago. I haven't lost a single user because of Gemini. We could even, I think, integrate with Gemini if you want to push the data. It's because like if someone come to me and say, yeah, I want to take notes and I'm just on my own, I'm going to say, yeah, why don't you use a Gemini? Maybe they are going to say, yeah, because French is not good enough or stuff like this. And say, fine, you can use the self-served license, but it's not my ICP. And for example, in terms of revenue, we really differentiate the revenue in our ICP versus the one not in our ICP. And we see that the retention rate and so on is like completely like the opposite. And I know, and for Gemini, for example, I have like tons of questions. I know what to ask the prospect just to make sure I have all the arguments to beat Gemini. So it's not even a competitor, because if it's just about the note taking, it's not our use case. But if it's about productivity, so it implies like all the integration with your CRM, which is not about just sending notes, but it's further than that. It's about field enrichment. So also about the two-way synchronization, about enriching data over time and so on. So it's much more complex. Or same if you want to do sales coaching, Gemini will never just focus on one specific use case. So yeah, I think at some point, if you are clear on your ICP and how to serve them, yeah, it's the horizontal. It's for me, it's not it's big, big. It's not the biggest threat. You always have threat, but I think if you focus on customer, it's fine.
I love that last sentence. That's how I mean, you have the clear ICP and you make this choice of saying no to everyone outside of it because you focus on the one you serve best, and that's really the key for you. So that's nice to have this focus. And the second part of the question was on now that you have more features, and as you said earlier, when you were looking for the right use case, you kind of regret not showing only one, the one of the link to sales, the one use case that was working for you. Now you're gonna get many different use cases within the same one, which is productivity, which is quite broad, but you have many sub-segments, sub-use cases. How are you thinking of pitching now Clap to the prospect you're gonna have?
I think like the reality is that we are more and more sales led.
Okay.
So in the end, it's the most important is really the discovery that you do. So you really understand the unique problems they want to solve. And in the end, your demo, you don't show all your features, but you really show like the ones that are like the most important to them. I think that for me, that's really like the most important stuff. And the second one, I would say it's more about the kind in the pitch. What I do is that because I think people in the AI space, they also expect to have some recommendations and to be educated. So my end goal is to make them expert in using conversations to power AI agents. And so that's my end goal. And even when I pitch the kind of the journey with Claap, and I say, okay, this is going to be the easiest way to use AI for your sales team. In general, I really also tend to project them in the term of use cases they can unlock. So for example, I'm going to say, yeah, first, the most obvious use case is going to be sales productivity. You are going to automate all your tasks, but also you are going to start capturing data at the same time. So the second use case you are going to unlock very soon is about getting the right insights, for example, to improve your conversion rates. And this is a story of I like Tender or OnSpot that, and we have like real stories with real figures to showcase that this is really happening. And then third, I say, okay, this one is a bit more advanced, but this is an example of Pontus that created AI agents to run win-loss analysis automatically using data from Clap. And so it's also a way to if you want to showcase the full potential without introducing too much complexity, I think it's also a good way to kind of showcase the journey and say, okay, it's like it's like a movie, and you have like some arcs, and at each stage you are going to unlock new skills.
Like a game.
Yeah,
Amazing.
exactly. It's like missionaire.
I wish that was my career as well. Shonen would be amazing. I think that's really interesting because at first, your first idea at the very first in 2021 was PLG. And now you switch to really a sales-led motion for the things that to come. And now that you can afford to have many different use cases at once, many different entry points, because that's how you can shape it depending on the prospect. But on a marketing perspective, you are going to get known for one thing. You're going to get more and more established in the market. But if you can keep growing sales-led, that's perfect because you don't need much more of a motion for inbound and all of the marketing-led things. But in terms of identifying and explaining Clap from an outside perspective, what category are you playing it?
So I think like the historical category is really about revenue intelligence slash conversation intelligence. Like the thing for me, the benefit of an existing category is that in general you have a line of budget that already exists for that, and you don't need to create a demand. Like you need to capture the demand. It's really about mouse, about demand generation. It's about identifying like signals, etc. But basically, at some point, you have a brand that is known, and you want to be basically in the top 3 of solutions that people benchmark when they want to buy a solution. I think that's kind of the goal when you work on the marketing aspect of this. And honestly, that's a bit the strategy we've had so far. But to answer your point about sales led versus product led, I think like right now we are like still like very much a mix of both. And so it's almost like product led sales. And the product is also a good acquisition engine because we are probably one of the only solution on this market to have a self-serve solution. And I know also to showcase that it's very easy to use, very intuitive, the UX is very delightful, all this kind of stuff. I think it also serves a lot our positioning. But right now, yeah, we are not on the new category, it's this category. And I think we are testing new stuff to see also how the market is going to evolve. Like you have the sales AI agents and so on, but it's always hard to like the category creation. I was the guy. I love this book, Play Bigger, on how to do category creation and so on. But the reality is a bit more complex than that.
Yeah, and I think that shows when you had your first pivot and that you had your first idea of replace meetings and now you pivoted toward demand. Creating a category is, I'm kind of against the idea of creating it, except when it's a tech breakthrough, like Lovable is doing right now with really new technologies and for demand that's already existing. But for most cases, it's much better to do like you're doing. You're going into a validated market, category existing, like revenue intelligence, and then find the right segment or ICP or thing to
No,
differentiate with it.
and at the same time, I think like this playbook, it's still like very useful, even if you are like in an existing category, if you want to really differentiate yourself, because it forces you to. What I like about this exercise that it's if you want to, I think the best pitch is when you explain the product, the problem the best way possible, and you need to iterating and working on that. And maybe in some cases it's going to be a category, and in most cases it's not going to be a category, but it's fine because it's going to be a better pitch at the end of the day.
Perfect. And is it what you're chasing after? Now I know the market is moving and you're obviously chasing growth like everyone in SaaS trying to do better to be more sustainable at the end. But is it what you're chasing after? Defining the problem better and having the best fit toward it?
Yeah, that's really like the stuff I love doing.
Kind of chasing the best
Yeah.
product market fit, the
Yeah.
best.
No, and I think you have also, it's true, like for me, you have like some degrees of product market fit. And if you really, really, really want to explode, you need to at some point solve a problem that is so big and your answer is so perfect that it becomes like huge. And but it's I think it's a constant iteration on this.
Agree. I'm glad that you have a background in product marketing and it's perfect. We have the same take as you on this. And so, Pierre, I'm out of questions already because I have many, many more, but I think it's going to be more too detailed for a podcast. So I have maybe a few last ones, if you may allow.
Yeah.
I understood the progress of how you found the right use case, then expanded, clarified your ICP, and then you get closer and closer, and that's how you develop your roadmap for the rest for the future. Now, what do you wish you would have done differently if we look at it like maybe
I
not
think
from the beginning, but yeah.
yeah, pivot faster because when we launched the beta, our users were like from the beginning using the extension to record meetings. So yeah, we had it from the beginning. So I think like my pivot faster. Like if I had to start again, yeah.
And maybe if I can squeeze one more answer from you on this, when do you know when to pivot?
Uh, you mean on our side? No, I think it's more about when you realize that if you continue like this, it's not going to work. That was like the thing on our side. I think it's a lot about the problems and the willingness to pay. I think when you do product led, you tend to focus a lot on the usage. So for example, I had a lot of calls with users, more user research calls, but we are like really discussing super tactical problems about the place of this button or thing like this. But in the end, you miss a bit the point. And I think the real answer, you get it when you ask people to pay.
Please make people pay. That's why every first time founder I recommend to remove the free trial. We did it recently with a client who removed it. And that's how we actually found the answer of who the RCP is. And it's the fastest way to have answers clearly, to know who is your ICP, etc.
Exactly.
At one point to this, I think the velocity matters as well. Willingness to pay and the pain, of course, and the problem is obviously important, but also in terms of startups, when you want to grow fast for a SaaS business, you kind of have to have some kind of deadline for the sale, something that pushes people to act. And a way to see that is to see how fast people are buying and using adopting the products,
Yeah.
and the alignment between people who buy fast and don't churn afterward. So all of these are metrics to take in consideration, but I love the answer on how you have to prioritize the willingness to pay and the real
Yeah, and at
people,
the
real
same time,
customers.
but if you do that too much as well, you are in some cases not also focusing on the product experience and this kind of stuff. So it's also it's also balance to find, I think.
It's a mix, it's a continuous refinement, like the product
Yeah,
market fit thing. Perfect. Pierre, thank you.
thanks.
Any last advice you would give to listeners on the same on this quest to grow a SaaS business? My listeners are founders and marketers in B2B SaaS. If you have any advice that you didn't share today, is there anything you want to add?
I don't know. Let me think about it. Maybe one advice would be like people see a lot of overnight success. You know, when we started, we saw a lot of overnight success, but when you deep dive, you realize that the overnight success took probably like a couple of like years before. For example, even Lovable, they said they launched 10 months ago, but they had like a product not working
For years.
for years. So it's not 10 months. It was also a lot of work before. So I think it's also finding if it's not working right away, it's normal, but it's really a constant iteration.
Thank you, Pierre. Where can we follow you? LinkedIn, I guess?
Yeah, LinkedIn. Yeah.
LinkedIn is the best? Okay. Thank you for your time, Pierre, and good luck with Clap.
Thanks, Gaspar. Cheers.
This is the end of the episode, so thank you for listening or watching if you're on YouTube. I'd like to thank a lot Eric Saclay, who has a B2B content agency, who made the intro for me to meet Pierre. So thank you, Eric. I think we should always thank people for intros when you get some, so thank you again. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe, leave a like, and even share it if you want to help someone. Thanks a lot and have a good day. Bye-bye.